Every police officer has a story they wish they could forget. For me, that day was in Wyoming. But before that, let me tell you about my background. I've served in the force for 15 years, and during that time, I've seen my fair share of strange things. I've come across unexplained occurrences that still keep me up at night. It's not that I'm not good at my job, but I always had imposter syndrome before taking on any project. I was always afraid of making a mistake or not living up to expectations. But that one accident in Wyoming changed everything for me. It was a turning point in my life. It made me realize there was more to my job than just following protocols. It made me question the very fabric of reality and open my eyes to a world of possibilities that I never knew existed. On a Thursday morning, I received a call from the National Park Service about a bushfire in Wyoming. They were concerned about the fire spreading and wanted us to resolve the issue as quickly as possible so that they could allow visitors in. It struck me as odd that they would want to let people in when there was a bushfire raging, but I didn't question their judgment. As soon as I arrived on the scene, I realized that we had our work cut out for us. The wind was blowing strong that day, and we knew that we had to work fast and hard to contain the flames. We spent most of the day fighting the fire, trying to stop it from spreading. But as the wind picked up embers and threw them to other places, we knew that our task was becoming increasingly difficult. It was a grueling day, and as I battled the flames, I couldn't help but secretly wish that I had chosen a different career. But I knew that I had a duty to perform, and I pushed on despite the doubts in my mind. Little did I know that what lay ahead would test me in ways that I never could have imagined. We were in the middle of fighting the bushfire when something strange happened. I felt a sudden drop in temperature, and I wasn't the only one who noticed it. One of the other firefighters also remarked on the unusual change in temperature. The wind, which had been blowing fiercely, suddenly stopped. It was as if nature itself was holding its breath. Despite the strangeness of these events, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this would be our chance to completely put out the fire. But then, a low growling sound broke the silence. It was a sound that sent a chill down my spine. I looked toward the source of the noise, but all I could see were flames. What was making that sound? Was it an animal or something else entirely? I knew that we were in uncharted territory, and I braced myself for what was to come. It was so loud that I could feel it in my bones. I froze, unsure of what to do next. Then, I saw it, a dark shape moving between the dancing flames. It took me a moment to realize what it was, but when my eyes focused, I saw that it looked like a large black wolf. Its eyes were fixed on me, almost as if it could see me through the fire. Its fur seemed to reflect the colors of the flames, making it appear almost supernatural. I wasn't the only one who saw it. My colleague turned to look at me, and I could tell from his expression that he had seen it too. As we watched, the wolf moved like a shadow, running directly through the flames along the full length of the fire. It was surreal, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. When I knew it was over, my colleague yelled out, "What the hell was that?" I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that what we had just witnessed was something inexplicable, and it sent shivers down my spine. To this day, I still have no explanation for what I saw in Wyoming. As we stood there frozen in fear, the howling sound of the wolf sent chills down our spines. We couldn't believe our eyes as we watched the large black wolf run directly through the flames without a single burn. Its eyes seemed to be glowing with an eerie intensity, reflecting the colors of the fire. As it ran, it emitted a screeching sound that echoed throughout the forest. My colleague and I exchanged a glance, both of us unsure of what to do next. Was this creature even real, or was it a trick of the mind brought on by the stress of the situation? As we continued to watch in horror, the wolf disappeared into the darkness beyond the fire. We were left with more questions than answers, wondering if what we had witnessed was even possible. After hours of fighting, we were finally able to extinguish the fire, and the relief was palpable. As we began to pack up our gear and head back to camp, my colleague suggested that we search for the wolf that I had seen earlier. I agreed, intrigued by the creature that had seemed to appear out of nowhere and disappear just as quickly. We followed the tracks of the wolf that led directly into the flames, but as we searched for its remains, we found nothing. No charred fur, no bones, no sign that the creature had ever existed. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. I was growing more and more confused by the second, and my colleague seemed to sense it. He reminded me of how the wind had suddenly stopped blowing, which had been so strange at the time. I checked with other parks and reserves in the area, and they all confirmed that the wind had never stopped that day. In fact, it had only grown stronger, fanning the flames and making our job all the more difficult. I was shaken to the core. There was no explanation for what had happened in Wyoming. The wolf that I had seen, the strange drop in temperature, the sudden stillness of the wind, it all felt like something out of a horror movie. But there was no denying that it had happened, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had been at work. As we drove back to camp, I couldn't help but feel like we were being watched. Every shadow, every rustle in the bushes made my heart race. When we finally arrived back at camp, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt heavy, and I couldn't seem to catch my breath. That night, as we sat around the campfire, I told my colleagues about the wolf and strange events that had transpired. Some of them looked at me skeptically, but others nodded knowingly. They had heard stories like mine before, tales of strange happenings in the wilderness that defied explanation. As we settled down to sleep, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. I tossed and turned in my sleeping bag, unable to shake the feeling that we were not alone. And then, just as I was about to drift off, I heard it, a low growling sound just beyond the perimeter of our campsite. I froze, my heart racing in my chest. I knew then without a doubt that something was out there in the darkness, something that shouldn't be there. And as the growling grew louder, I knew we were in grave danger. The rest of the night was a blur of fear and adrenaline as we tried to fend off whatever was stalking us. We could hear the creature circling our campsite, its growls growing louder and more aggressive with each passing minute. We tried to light a fire to scare it off, but the wind was too strong and kept extinguishing our flames. Eventually, we realized that our only chance was to make a run for it. We quickly packed up our gear and started running through the forest, hoping to outrun the creature. We could hear it chasing after us, its heavy footsteps pounding the forest floor. Finally, we made it to our truck and quickly got inside, slamming the doors shut and locking them. As we drove away, I could still hear the creature's howls echoing through the forest. It was a night that none of us would ever forget, and one that left us all questioning what we thought we knew about the natural world.